My Bubby and Poppy were amazing people. They really had their house open to everybody. They did not know a single stranger.
People always came first.
My mom was super mom.
My grandmother was everything. She loved big. She worked hard.
My father was a very driven person. He believed in three things to his core. And these sound like broad, idealistic terms, but to my father, they were very real. And that was truth, liberty, and justice. That's what the Jewish Post is dedicated to.
He was a person that had like all around balance between work and life. He was the toughest boss I've ever had.
I understand now. He was all about teaching lessons and all about foundations.
My mother and father married at the end of World War II, had met at a USO dance, or a dance for Jewish soldiers in Boston, and pretty much were smitten with each other from the beginning. And as I understand it, asked her to dance, and I'm not sure that dance ever ended until he died. My parents were involved in a number of different enterprises, and he developed the idea that Dallas and Fort Worth would be able to be a good place for a Jewish newspaper. And he and my mother began exploring that, and in the same time frame, Sheldon Barron also was interested in having a publication. So they were introduced. Sheldon Barron was involved for a number of months. But the conclusion was that Sheldon Barron was walking away, and my parents were taking over. It was going to be their operation. My parents lived in a one-room apartment. They had gotten a big wooden wheel. My father made it into a table. The first issues of the newspaper were actually planned out on that handmade table in the one-bedroom apartment.
Earliest memory is hearing the addressograph clacking in my parents' bedroom.
By the time I was 3 or 4, if not before, I certainly knew that my parents and our family were engaged in an all-consuming effort to publish a weekly Jewish newspaper.
If you think of a building with pillars, that there were 4 of them. There was my mother, my father, and Nana and Uncle Jeff. No one could sell like my grandmother. I mean, she was still working at 92, and she could barely see, but she'd sit at her desk with a magnifying glass and the same notebook she'd written in for all those years.
And it was very much a family affair. My grandmother and uncle, may they rest in peace, would come over on Wednesday nights and Thursdays. There were specific tasks to do, all very directed toward getting out the newspaper.
He involved all his kids in the paper. And
I really grew up working for the newspaper. Everyone in the family somehow made their contribution and participated in the paper.
You know, when you work for the TJP, you work 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. It doesn't stop.
It's a labor of love. It's a job, and it's something that I do every day, but it's kind of like instilled in me.
Over the years, other papers have tried to come. We've seen people come and go, and there was one time where it really gave my grandparents a run for their money, and that's kind of when we all really came together and banded together and showed as a family that we were here to stay. We were here for more than just running a business.
My dad felt very strongly about independent journalism and wasn't afraid to voice his opinion. I think they knew the importance of Israel and how important Israel would be for the Jewish people moving forward, especially coming out of the Holocaust and World War II, and they felt a real responsibility to telling Israel's story.
I remember being told growing up that the paper was one of the first news outlets in the U.S. that was reporting on what was going on in Israel and how important that was to my great-grandfather Poppy. And you just see how that hasn't changed over the generations.
And it's not uncommon for somebody who's in their 80s or 90s to hear, oh, you're from the TJP. I've been getting the paper for 70 years.
Here's a community paper that's Dallas-Fort Worth, right? And I'm mailing papers to Israel. I'm mailing papers to 50 states of people who lived here and moved. And the tentacles of the paper were huge.
I was acutely aware that they were older, and when I graduated college, I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do, and I thought, well, I really want to make sure that the next paper gets out. I took that year off to learn how to run the business. Not really run the business, but get the next paper out. So I was there that year, and then I went to graduate school and became a social worker. And then I got married and I had kids, and I had a thriving private practice, and then I was also teaching at UT Arlington while I was doing my doctorate in social work. So I had taken the spring of 2002 off to finish my dissertation, and my dad passed away suddenly in January, and it kicked in that someone had to help my mom, who was almost 80 at the time, get the next paper out.
When you've been married for 50 something years, I think it was close to 55 or maybe 56, you wonder what happens when you lose a spouse. And I remember it was on the day that he passed away, and Rabbi comes and all these people come over and they're bringing food, and here's my mom who's lost her soulmate, right? And I'm just thinking to myself, God, what's this going to be like going forward, And growing up, my dad sat at the head of the table and my mom sat on the, at the other end. And my mom comes into the dining room with a plate of food and sits in my dad's chair. And at that point, I knew she was going to be okay and the family was going to be okay.
I was able to shift easily into full-time work again at the paper. And so really, I wasn't taking over as much as learning as much as I could from my mom. And it was a gift to be able to work with her every single day. And Amy and Reuben came to work within a couple months, and the three of us worked really hard to re-energize things, and it was a lot of fun.
I guess in the later years, I think the focus of the newspaper became very much on national and international news. Obviously, always had its Dallas doings and the around the town and some local content. But obviously with the addition of Sharon, I think that we really did a great job, like reconnecting with our Jewish roots here in Dallas.
I think it's a conduit to keep the Jewish people, the Jewish community in Fort Worth connected. I think you can't really rely on just the newspaper or whatever to provide that information, but the TJP is definitely a Jewish community newspaper. It encompasses everything.
Well, the legacy of the paper was amazing. I mean, my grandfather had this formula, this methodology that he worked, which he knew that if he worked a certain way, the paper always was successful.
The TJP is one of the cornerstones of the community, and it's one of the organizations that touches across the different streams of Judaism, across different age groups. We really try and reach out to everybody and be a resource for everybody. We're not unlike the Dallas Jewish Historical Society, where we document important things that have happened in the community.
We have a huge responsibility to report accurate news and to make sure that where we're getting our news is coming from, very reliable sources. The paper is doing a really good job of doing that.
It's hard to articulate that this is really more than just a job for all of us. It really is trying to serve the community and doing it with a full heart and honoring our parents' legacy.
I think the fact that the Texas Jewish Post is still in existence and still publishes a weekly print edition and a daily online edition, an edition that's updated daily, is a wonderful monument to them and the dreams they had that came true.
The song is dedicated to Bubby and Poppy. All it takes is a wish. Make a difference in this world. All it takes is a wish. Make a difference in this world. All it takes is a wish. make a difference in this world. All it takes is a wish. Make a difference in this world. Spreading love all around. How the paper was found. Spreading love all around. How the paper was found. Read about the Jewish news. Wipe away your newest blues. Read about the Jewish news. Wipe away your newest blues. 'Cause all it takes is a wish. Make a difference in this world. All it takes is a wish. Make a difference in this world. All it takes is a wish.